The movie opens on July 8, 1986, in a small town called Walson, where we meet two men named Timo and Pierre. They're inside Pierre's apartment, watching a disturbing video of a young girl. Afterward, they get into Pierre's red car and leave the house. As they're driving, they spot a young girl named Pia riding her bicycle. Seeing this, Pierre suddenly gets an idea. He reverses the car and starts following her through a remote wheat field. After making sure no one's around, Pierre gets out of the car. Pia quickly realizes something is wrong and tries to escape, but Pierre catches up with her and assaults her in the wheat field. Meanwhile, Timo watches in horror. It's clear he doesn't approve of what's happening, but he also doesn't stop it. Instead, he quietly picks up Pia's headphones, which had fallen to the ground, realizes Pia is dead, and begins to panic. He begs Timo for help, but Timo, overwhelmed by fear, walks back to the car in silence. Pierre places Pia's lifeless body in the trunk and throws her bicycle into the wheat field. As they drive away, Pierre instructs Timo to get rid of the headphones. A few days pass. At a park where Pierre works as a caretaker, several children are playing. He's busy scrubbing his car when he spots Timo in the distance, carrying a backpack. Pierre tries to approach him, but Timo quickly boards a bus and leaves town, clearly traumatized by what he witnessed. The story then jumps 23 years forward. A woman named Elena is seen jogging. She arrives at the wheat field, where a cross marks the spot of her daughter Pia's death. It's revealed that Pia was murdered in 1986. Elsewhere in town, a teenage girl named Sinikka is being scolded by her angry parents for skipping school. Her father demands an explanation, but Sinikka accuses the school of lying and storms out of the house, saying she's heading to tennis practice. However, she soon calls her friend Marie to meet up instead. The scene then cuts to Detective David arriving at the retirement party of his senior, Jahn. David appears emotionally distant. It's revealed that he recently lost his wife to cancer. Meanwhile, Sinikka arrives at an amusement park to meet Marie. She leaves a voicemail for her parents, saying she'll be staying the night at her friend's place. As the sun sets and Marie still doesn't show up, Sinikka grows nervous and leaves another message saying she'll go home if her friend doesn't arrive soon. Unknown to her, someone is watching her from a parked car. Later that night, Jahn visits David and hands him the file of a cold case he was never able to solve. The case of Pia, the 11-year-old girl who was assaulted and murdered in 1986. Her body was discovered days later in a nearby lake. A boy had reported seeing a red car near the scene, but the killer was never found. David notices that the murder took place on July 8th, the same date as today. Back to Sinikka. As she begins her ride home, the same car from earlier is still following her. At one point, she stops and turns around, just as a man steps out of the vehicle. Later, we see the same man throwing her bicycle into the very same field where Pia was murdered. We're then introduced to the adult Timo, now an architect with a wife and 2 daughters. After a long day, he checks on his children, joins his wife Julia in bed, and falls asleep. But the next morning, news breaks about a missing girl. Timo sees the report while attending a house party with his family. It's revealed that a girl's bicycle and gym bag were found in a wheat field, and police are now investigating similarities to Pia's murder. Timo is visibly shaken. Elsewhere, David and his superior Matthias visit the large lake where Pia's body was discovered. A diving team searches the waters, but finds nothing. They then go to Sinikka's house and speak with her panicked parents. Matthias asks if Sinikka had a boyfriend she could have run away with, but her mother denies it. Later that night, Timo lies awake, haunted by the news. He flashes back to a moment 23 years ago, sitting in a park, watching children play in the water. He's joined by Pierre, and they strike up a conversation. From their behavior, it becomes disturbingly clear that both men are pedophiles. In the present, Timo struggles to enjoy time with his family. He tells his boss he's sick and can't come to work, then lies to his wife, saying there's an urgent issue at work and he needs to leave. Timo promises to return the next night and quietly slips away. Meanwhile, a mysterious man is seen returning to his car in a remote area. He hears a phone ring. It's Sinikka's father trying to reach her. But the man throws the phone away. That evening, Jahn visits David at home and brings him a box of evidence from Pia's case. He's convinced the same killer is behind Sinikka's disappearance. Though officially retired, Jahn begs David to help solve what he couldn't finish. We then see a flashback of Timo visiting Pierre's apartment 23 years ago. During their conversation, Pierre hints at their shared attraction to young girls and shows Timo a disturbing video. Timo tries to leave, but ultimately stays. The video shows a grown man abusing a child. Shockingly, Timo doesn't seem repulsed. Instead, he watches it in silence, almost mesmerized. In the present, the investigation is slow. The police are frustrated. Jana, David's colleague, goes through old case files. She points out that a red car was reported near Pia's disappearance. She adds that another girl had vanished years ago, and a red car was seen then, too. Jana compiles a list of about 500 red cars registered in the area in the 1980s. David cross-references this with Kriskin's old file and notes that many car owners were already interviewed, leaving just a few more to investigate. In another scene, Timo, who has returned to Walson, meets Pierre, who is still working as a caretaker at the same park. Pierre is overjoyed to see his old friend after so many years and invites him to his home. They sit awkwardly in the living room until Timo suddenly asks what Pierre did with the recently missing girl. Pierre is stunned by the question and quickly denies having anything to do with it. When Timo points out the similarities between this case and Pia's, Pierre dismisses it as a coincidence. He insists that what happened to Pia was a one-time mistake, that he hasn't done anything like that since. Timo starts to feel uncomfortable and tries to leave, but Pierre stops him and hands him a CD, saying it's his favorite video, the one featuring the dark-haired girl Timo used to like. Disturbed, Timo rushes outside, but still takes the CD with him. Later, in his hotel room, Timo plays the CD. It turns out to be the same disturbing video he had watched 23 years earlier. Strangely, the video arouses him, but afterward, he feels overwhelming shame and breaks down in tears. We flash back to that fateful day in 1986 when Timo waited in the car while Pierre disposed of Pia's body in the lake. The next day, Timo returns to the park and is seen chatting with a child on a swing. Pierre then approaches him and invites him to his apartment to watch a movie. Timo hesitantly agrees, but as they near the house, guilt overtakes him, and he runs away. The conflicted young Timo heads to the police station, ready to confess everything. But when it's time to speak, he can't bring himself to do it and leaves without saying a word. Timo visits the wheat field, gazing silently at the spot where Pia was killed. He then goes to Elena's house, pretending to be a potential tenant looking for property in the area. Elena kindly invites him inside. During the conversation, Timo brings up the subject of children after seeing photos on a table. Elena tells him her daughter was murdered 23 years ago. Timo apologizes for bringing up the painful memory. After a short chat, he leaves, but Elena watches him from the window and sees him crying in his car, which raises her suspicions. Later, Jahn arrives at Elena's house. It's revealed they are in a relationship. Elena tells him that the man who killed her daughter was just here and hands him Timo's business card. Meanwhile, David and Jana continue investigating old red car owners from the 1980s. Suddenly, David gets an urgent call and has to leave. Jana proceeds to visit Pierre alone at his home. Timo, on the other hand, goes to the lake where Pia's body was dumped. Sitting quietly, he receives a call from his wife Julia, who is upset that he hasn't returned in 3 days. She informs him that their daughter has fallen off the trampoline. Emotional, Timo asks to speak with his daughter, but Julia says someone is at the door and abruptly hangs up. It turns out to be David and Jahn, there to interrogate Timo. At the same time, Jana questions Pierre about the red car he owned from 1982 to 1986. Pierre admits he had one, but sold it years ago and now only uses a motorcycle. When Jana mentions the missing girl and asks about his whereabouts on July 8th, Pierre grows nervous and excuses himself, claiming he needs to grab something. Back at Timo's house, the detectives question Julia. She tells them Timo is out of town for work, but she doesn't know which hotel he's staying at. While looking around, Jahn enters Timo's office, where he checks his computer and uncovers disturbing child pornography videos saved in Timo's folders. Julia is horrified, realizing her husband is not who she thought he was. Meanwhile, Pierre takes out his diary and a small knife from a drawer. He returns to Jana, explaining he documented his activities on July 8th and reluctantly hands over the diary, keeping one hand close to his pocket, ready to strike if needed. At the same time, David talks to Julia about her husband's past. She reveals that Timo used to live in Walson as a student and only moved there permanently in 1986. She also says he disliked his original last name and changed it after leaving the town. Jana finishes reviewing Pierre's diary but finds nothing incriminating and decides to leave. Meanwhile, Timo remains by the lake, lost in thought. Eventually, he makes a tragic decision. He takes his own life. Police arrive at the scene and lift his car from the lake, revealing his lifeless body inside. Jahn now feels a sense of closure, believing he's finally solved the case. News reports confirm that Timo was the man responsible for the murders of Pia and Sinikka. The next day, an elderly man is seen swimming in a different lake. Suddenly, he discovers Sinikka's body underwater. Police retrieve the body and notify her devastated parents. Later, while her parents are at the autopsy, David reviews old evidence. He finds a photo of Pia's headphones and listens to a recording from an old eyewitness. The boy had said the headphones were thrown from the passenger side of a moving car. This proves someone else was with Timo that day. David rushes to inform his boss, Matthias, insisting there was a second person involved who is still free. But Matthias dismisses the idea, claiming Timo's DNA was on the headphones and that he was a known pedophile who even changed his name to avoid suspicion. However, David is puzzled by one detail. Sinikka was not assaulted, only killed. He wonders why a pedophile would do such a thing unless it was to send a message. He theorizes that two men committed the original crime in 1986. After Timo vanished, the second man might have recreated the murder in the same way to lure Timo back. Matthias again refuses to believe this theory. The argument escalates and turns physical, resulting in David being suspended from the investigation. In the final scene, a car pulls into a garage. It's the same one used in Sinikka's murder. Pierre steps out, confirming he was the real killer behind it all. He returns the keys to a neighbor, from whom he had borrowed the vehicle. The woman casually tells him about the news. Timo, a suspected pedophile, took his own life. Hearing this, Pierre is devastated. Though he manipulated Timo, he never expected or wanted his old friend to die. The movie ends with Pierre returning to his apartment, grieving deeply over Timo's death, showing that his monstrous crimes were fueled not just by evil, but by a sick and twisted longing for connection. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.